don't struggle too much now. While I kill you in your sleep. What is lost if it's not being by yourself? I won't be gentle to the body on the shelf. Only water, it's only fire, it's only love. It's so tough, we're only lovers, it's only blood. Ever feel like you can't breathe? Does the water feel too deep? Lie awake 'cause you can't sleep without me. Ever feel like you're alone when you're lost but you're already home? Lie awake 'cause you can't dream without me.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome, class of 2024. Congratulations to you, your families, anyone who kind of supported you on your journey to kind of get to this point. We are extremely excited at the prospect of you joining us here in the sunny Bay Area, here at Stanford University. Unfortunately, we all know we can't welcome you all on campus at this time. But again, on behalf of the Office of Student Engagement, the Greek community, we just want to say you all deserve to be here, and you all should be proud of being admitted here at Stanford University. We're grateful you've taken some time to join us this afternoon to learn a little bit about the fraternity and sorority community. So we're going to jump right into that at this moment. My name is Christopher Carter. I serve as an assistant director in the Office of Student Engagement and Fraternity and Sorority Life. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm joined today by my colleague, Amanda Rodriguez, who's my boss. She is the Assistant Dean in the Office of Student Engagement and Director of Fraternity and Sorority Life. Give us a wave. Thanks, Amanda. She uses she, her pronouns. We're going to be your hosts and moderators throughout our session today. Some of you might have joined us for some of the sessions earlier in the week. Some of you might be here for the first time. I'll give you a little bit of context. First, the Office of Student Engagement is a hub for student involvement across campus. We support around 600 student organizations, including fraternities and sororities. I think we're one of the last activities fair sessions throughout this week, but you all have access to view previous recordings as well as check our recording again later at admit.stanford.edu if you want to learn a little bit more. For the people who've been on other sessions, this one will be a little bit different. We won't have the breakout rooms, so you're free to talk to individual student organizations. But as you can see, we have some phenomenal student panelists who are going to talk briefly about their experience, and we'll have a little bit of a Q&A format as well. To kick it off, we're going to go hyper speed, but hopefully in depth about just the general Greek community and some information that'll be helpful for you all before we jump into the Q&A and talk to the students. But before we do that, I will give them an opportunity to just quickly introduce themselves. So joining us today, we have Araceli. She's from Alpha Phi, one of our ISC organizations. We also have Emily from Kappa Alpha Theta, one of our ISC organizations. From Texas joining us, we have Evan from Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, one of our historically Black Greek organizations, part of our AFSA Council. We have Kivita joining from Sigma Psi Zeta Multicultural Sorority, which is one of our MGC organizations. And we also have Panos from Delta Kappa Epsilon, or DEEC. He's also one of the vice presidents for the Interfraternity Council Executive Board. So those are our students. Again, you'll hear from them later in our session. But we're going to quickly kind of jump in and talk a little bit about kind of our values. That's me and Amanda. We're awesome. So you can see us there. Again, intros, overview, panel, Q&A. So some of our guiding values in fraternity sorority life, as well as in student affairs, is to what extent are we, contributing to student belonging, being mindful of equity and inclusion, creating an opportunity for students to integrate their learning in the classroom, their professional experiences, their research experiences, as well as their involvement experiences, as well as being mindful and supporting student mental health and well-being. And the Greek community is a great community to support all of these things. One of the things that makes the Greek experience unique here at Stanford is the students really prioritizing their sisterhoods, their brotherhoods, and supporting their peers, being a place for students to find mentorship and belonging, opportunities for those professional networks with alums. Additionally, one of the things that I know the students will probably talk a lot about is the Greek community here is really aims to not be an exclusive entity on campus. So they are really open to other student organizations, other residential communities, as well as supporting their members in all their different initiatives, whether they're on a sports team, doing a performance in either musically or acting or directing, their service opportunities, and knowing that at Stanford, plenty of them are creating their own apps in their dorm rooms, and they're supporting them through that as well. So that's just a little bit about what makes the Stanford community unique here. And we'll keep going along. I'm going to speed through this history. You all don't need a history lesson. All I really need you all to know is that fraternities and sororities have been at Stanford as long as students have been welcome on campus, beginning in 1891. Additionally, you can see that fraternities and sororities have been in American higher education since the country's founding. So I just want to touch on that. And then more recently, I just want to highlight that Stanford had its first culture-based organizations in the late 70s. Alpha Phi Alpha and Alpha Kappa Alpha joined here at Stanford. Only recently, Stanford had its first culture-based organization be awarded university housing back in 2017. And as we kind of touched on earlier, fraternity sorority life transitioned to this Office of Student Engagement last summer. So that's just a brief history. But we'll kind of jump into the stuff you all are most interested in. Here is just some brief numbers about the Greek community. We make up about 23 to 25% of the undergraduate student population across our 4 governing councils. there are 26 active fraternities and sororities. At the current moment, 4 of our houses are for sororities, and then there are 5 house fraternities. That'll look a little different going into the next academic year. Again, around 1,400 Greek students here at Stanford. Many of you know that we have peer institutions, some of which have more students who might be Greek. Some might not have recognized Greek communities at all, and some might have a little bit less. But again, we're just kind of right there in that middle, that sweet spot. Again, as I said before, it's really great to have a robust, flourishing Greek community that's around 1/4 of the student population, but also be mindful that the Greek population, again, is very much integrated into the student experience. All the students that you're going to hear from are involved in a plethora of other organizations, so they're not just strictly Greek students, and that's their only source of community and involvement on campus. In regards to joining a fraternity or sorority, the students will talk a little about their experiences and how recruitment and intake went for them. We just want to highlight that we practice deferred recruitment here at Stanford. First-year students are eligible to participate in a formal recruitment process during their spring quarter. This is primarily related to giving you an opportunity to get acquainted with the academic rigor, as well as create communities in your residential spaces, in your dorms, meet your RFs, and get involved in other things as well. So there's a lot of intentionality behind it, and it's not necessarily the norm everywhere. That's something we're really proud of and something that's not going anywhere anytime soon. So deferred recruitment, just be mindful that some of the stuff we'll talk about won't be a long way off for you, but we're glad you're joining us today and getting some information as well. Before we kind of hear from the students, just a quick overview of some of the opportunities that are part of the Greek community specifically. One, we want to highlight the Emerson Fellowship. We're really proud to have 2 cohorts for the Emerson Fellowship through the Haas Center, which is an opportunity for Greek students to participate across with members from all 4 councils to talk about service and activism within their communities, whether it's their Greek organization or outside of Stanford. We also have Greek students who participate in student staff, so they might serve as RAs in all Frosh communities, co-op communities, different things like that, as well as council leadership. Like I mentioned, Panos serves as a member of council leadership. So there's opportunities for self-governance and really playing a role in shaping the experience of your peers through the Greek community. We'll jump really quick into our active organizations. This is our beautiful AFSA Council, or again, our African American Fraternal and Sorority Association. It is our smallest council on campus, so we do have 4 of the historically Divine 9 or historically Black Greek letter organizations active here at Stanford. Again, we have 2 fraternities and 2 sororities. We have our Interfraternity Council. It's made up of 10 fraternities. Again, they have been around, again, since the university's founding. Again, half of which are housed at this moment, and the other half are not. But again, it's one of our larger councils as well. I also want to highlight that AEPI is not one of our culture-based organizations, but they're historically a Jewish organization that's open to anybody. But I just want to highlight that, again, there are different opportunities and a variety of experiences and backgrounds represented in all of our organizations. Our largest council is our Inter-Sorority Council, or traditionally known as Panhellenic in other spaces. They represent about 50% of the Greek community are women identified students in these organizations. We have 7 in the ISC Council. And again, at this moment, 3 are housed. Going forward, there will be 5 that are housed going into next academic year. So that's a little bit about them. And then last, we have our Multicultural Greek Council. Again, it's a beautiful picture of them. Again, we have 5 active culture-based organizations on the MGC, 2 of which are Asian interest organizations. We have 1 multicultural sorority, and Kavita can give you a little bit of information around that. And then we also have 2 Latino, Latinx serving organizations as well in the MGC. Again, they're open to anyone from any background or experience or racial and ethnic identities. But again, these are organizations that are founded in uplifting and empowering minoritized communities and people on campus. So I just want to highlight them. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to jump in and give each of these students an opportunity to kind of share a little about themselves, their background, why they joined their organization, and then we'll jump into a Q&A. So first, we're going to have Araceli from Alpha Phi.
Hi everyone, as you just heard Carter say, my name is Araceli. I am a junior. I'm a political science major, and I am a member of Alpha Phi. I'm actually also the vice president of diversity and inclusion within Alpha Phi. I also have a job on the side where I work at the Stanford legal office, otherwise known as the Office of the General Counsel. So a little bit about why I decided to join Greek life and how that impacted my time at Stanford. So coming in, I ended up turning to Greek life because I was really looking for a community. And I'd found that I really loved the community that I had in my freshman dorm, but I was told that that would be hard to maintain or to find after freshman year. So I ended up going into Greek life, which was a little scary to be honest, because I'm the only person in my life in my family that's involved in Greek life. But I ended up coming out of the process with a community of women that I love and admire. Some of my best friends are Alpha Phi's, and I even got to go abroad with them this past fall, which was amazing. But I also ended up getting more out of Alpha Phi than just a community. I also found a way to maintain philanthropy, which is something that I've always been really passionate about. And on top of that, I also got to start a position for something that I really cared about, diversity and inclusion. So that's just a little bit about me.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Panos.
Hi everyone, I'm Panos. I use he, him pronouns. As Carter said, I'm Vice President of Delta Kappa Epsilon Sigma Rho chapter, and I'm also Vice President of Health and Safety and Diversity and Inclusion on the Interfraternity Council. I'm a junior studying biology and comparative literature with a sociology minor, and I'm on the pre-medical track here at Stanford, so many of my other activities address my interests in science and medicine, especially service. I volunteer at the adult and children's hospitals and a free clinic in San Jose. So that's been really great. I didn't actually think I was going to get involved in Greek life in college. I think I subscribe to many of the stereotypes that exist, especially about fraternities that you hear about in high school and popular culture in general. But I think when I got here, I realized that I did really want to find a community, specifically of men that cared about fostering each other's personal, social, academic, professional development, and also just have a good time with each other. So I joined D spring of my freshman year, and then I became passionate about improving the Greek experience, which is why I became vice president, which is why I joined IFC. But I think the main thing is that no matter what chapter you're in, and no matter what org you're in, no matter your level of involvement, it's always nice to have a group of people that you can always come back to outside of your classes, outside of your dorms, and always know that you have a home there. So it's been really good for me, even though I didn't expect I would join going into Stanford.
All right, thank you, Panos. All right, we'll have Evan.
Hi everyone, my name is Evan Miller. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the president of the Xi Beta chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I'm a senior graduating this year, a communication major, and I'm also the vice president of the African American Fraternal and Sororal Association, which we tend to just call AFSA. And as you can see on the slide, some other community involvements that I have. I've also been the committee chair for the Black Family Gathering Committee, which puts on Black Fest. I'm also a member of Ram's Head Theatrical Society, which does like a big musical every year, and a member of Black Student Union. So a little bit about why I joined AKA. AKA is an organization that's focused on lifelong membership, and my mom joined when she was in college. So I really grew up, around AKA. As you can see, my room is pink and green. It's always kind of been a part of my experience. So I knew I wanted to join because I saw the sisterhood that my mom was able to have with the people that she came in with, and also the service and the way that they were able to impact their communities through the work that they were doing. And I knew that that's something that I wanted for myself. So in terms of how it's actually impacted my Stanford experience, I just joined last year, so only about, a year in the game, but I kind of had a unique experience in that everyone in our chapter was graduating out, so I was thrust into a leadership role without ever having seen anyone do it. So, being a part of AKA really helped me hone those key leadership skills, learn about, myself in the process, and also, it did deliver on helping me find that community of strong, like-minded Black women, and also being able to impact Stanford and the broader Bay Area through service as well.
Great, thank you, Evan.
Hi Hi everyone, my name is Emily and I am the current president of Kappa Alpha Theta, or just Theta. Prior to being president, I served as the chief operating officer of the organization and then as the financial assistant. I am double majoring in political science and sociology. And then outside of Theta, I am one of the vice presidents of Stanford Women in Business and also involved in She++, which is a nonprofit dedicated to empowering women in technology. And then I also work at the Jewish Community Center. So definitely have a lot of other involvements and outside of Theta. But overall, I joined the organization, like many others have said, because I had such an awesome freshman year community and wanted to really expand my network. And I just wanted to meet more people on campus and other women on campus. And Theta gave me that opportunity, and it's had such a positive impact on my Stanford experience. I don't think Stanford would be Stanford without Greek life and the experience I've had, and it's challenged me, it's helped me grow as a person, and it's overall been really great.
All right. Thanks, Emily. Next we have Kavita.
Hello, my name is Kavita. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a current junior and I'm majoring in computer science. And I'm part of the Omicron chapter of Sigma Psi Zeta, which is a multicultural Asian rooted sorority, which is a mouthful, but basically means that we were founded as an Asian interest sorority, but in recent years, our nationals has made the shift to becoming more of a multicultural sorority. So yeah, before sophomore year, I never really planned to join Greek life. But during my sophomore year, I got very involved in the Asian American community on campus. And I noticed that in a lot of the communities that I was in and a lot of the ones that I also wasn't in, that a lot of the leadership positions were not taken, but they were held by Sigma Psi Zeta members. And I just thought that these people were really cool, that they were balancing schoolwork and extracurriculars and activism all at the same time, while also being dedicated to their culture. So I just really wanted to meet more of these cool people. And so that's why I decided to join SYZ.
All right. Thank you. So we're going to jump into a Q&A. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can kind of see these beautiful people up closer. Amanda and I will kind of read out a few questions, and a few of them have kind of have some prepared responses. Once we kind of go through that, in the chat feature or in the Q&A feature, you all should be able to submit questions that we can answer after we've gone through a few questions that we have prepared. All right. Cool. So the first question I want to throw out there is, what kinds of programs and events do your organizations provide for your members and the broader Stanford community? And I will throw this to Araceli first.
So we have a ton of events and programs that we host for our sisters. So just some off the top of my head include brunches at some of the diners around Palo Alto. We have weekly movie or TV nights. We have weekly sisterhood study nights. We even have a quarterly cafe night where some of our sisters come and perform some of their awesome talents. And on top of that, Alpha Phi is really involved with fitness. So we do have a lot of membership programs at Pure Barre, Berries, and I think we just added another one, but I can't remember. So there's definitely a ton of events for sisters to go to every week, basically. And then on top of that, we do have a lot of philanthropy events, which we're really proud of. So we have Alpha FIFA and Red Dress Gala. Those happen twice per year. And then on top of that, we do have social mixtures, which are a great way for us to engage with the Greek community.
Awesome, thank you. What about you, Evan?
Yeah, so for AKA, service is one of the core tenets of our sorority. So we put on a lot of events that, allow not only members of our chapter, but also members of the Stanford community to engage in direct service. And these events tend to be centered around the 5 core programming targets internationally of our sorority. So some examples of that, one of our programming targets is the arts. And so it focuses on Black art and artists of color and uplifting that. So recently we took a group of Stanford students to San Francisco to go see Hamilton, all expenses paid. Another one of our programming targets has to do with financial literacy. So this year we put on a workshop to help Stanford students learn about investing, to learn about saving, these things that are so key that you might not necessarily learn in a classroom. So those are some of the kinds of events that we put on. Also, we recently did, another one of our targets is global impact. So we recently did a partnership with the Stanford women's basketball team. One of our members is also on the team. And we were able to collect gently used shoes for donation to children and adults around the world at the basketball game. And we were able to collect over 300 pairs of shoes to donate. So those are just some examples of how we get ourselves and also the Stanford community involved in service through some of the events that we put on.
Great. We have a lot of questions coming in from our participants. So I'm actually just kind of going to jump to those because they seem far more relevant. So hopefully these aren't some curveballs for any of you. But I'm going to bring a couple of them together. So walk us through what are typical dues for fraternities and sororities, as well as how is the fraternity and sorority experience accessible to students who might come from first-gen low-income backgrounds who might not be able to afford these fees. And I will throw it over to Panos first.
Sure. So in terms of Greek life at Stanford overall, as with the overall orientation of the university, I really believe Greek life aims to be need blind. So whether you're rushing or you're an active member of an organization, your financial needs should not affect your ability to rush or to continue participating in the organization. So for example, I'll just say for DEEC, our quarterly dues are $350, but your fees are reduced or waived depending on your financial need. And that's the case for most chapters, so that we make sure we're staying as accessible as possible and making sure that no matter your income background, you can have the full experience of being in the organization. With respect to unhoused versus housed groups, I personally wanted to join an unhoused group because I like the idea of being immersed in a different residential community and then being able to engage with my Greek organization in a social setting, academic setting, professional setting. But I think a lot of my friends who are in housed fraternities absolutely love it, and they love living with the other members of their organization. So it really depends what kind of experience you want. I think unhoused organizations at Stanford are very creative in the ways that they can come up with to engage with their members so that their members have just as enriching an experience as members of housed organizations.
Great. Emily, would you like to talk through what dues, fees and dues look like in the ISC community?
Definitely. So ISC dues are generally, they vary. Usually when you join as a new member, that's probably like when dues are most expensive, but kind of reiterating what Panos said, that each organization tries to make dues as accessible as possible, and that like understanding that everyone's situations are different. Also, like for us as a chapter, we try and limit the number of events that are required that you would have to pay for aside from your dues. So there aren't any unforeseen cost to joining. I think that a lot of members are really like wary of having increased dues. So we work hard to make sure dues are pretty limited and as accessible to people as possible. And that when you're paying dues, that you're getting a lot out of it. It's not just you're paying to this and you don't know where it's going. Like you can see it goes to this specific event, or it goes to help run this philanthropic event, and just like a lot of different categories. So our members are well aware of like what everything costs and where it's going to, and how it works best for them as a member.
I'll also add that Greek organizations often take advantage of university resources in order to provide programming for their members. So for example, Stanford has an experiential learning fund that Greek organizations can apply to put on off-campus trips for their members that are completely free of cost. So you can see that even within organizations, we want to try to ensure financial accessibility, and then the university also supports us when we want to do something that might be even beyond what our dues could afford.
Great. So the next two topics I'm going to cover, because I've seen a lot of questions around them, are going to be recruitment and time commitment. So let's jump with the recruitment one first, and I'll throw it over to Evan to walk us through what traditional intake looks like for our culturally based organizations.
Yeah, so for AFSA organizations, it tends to be, I think, a little bit different. We typically start with kind of an informational event, which anyone can attend. You know, it's just an opportunity for you to learn more about the organization, get to meet some of the current members, ask any questions that you may have, really casual. And then, you know, in order to move forward in the process, you're required to attend a formal rush, which we, you know, publicize when that happens, and then anyone can come and basically submit their paperwork for candidacy. So that's kind of how, and then the intake process happens after that. So it's basically, and the way it works for us and just at Stanford in general, I mean, I don't know what it's going to look like this year with everything that's going on, but typically that's why freshmen are allowed to join our organizations, because at least for AKA, you're supposed to have 2 graded periods completed by the time you join membership. So we start all of that in the spring. So freshmen are eligible for intake and recruitment. So that's kind of how our process works. I know it can differ from council to council, but the really just key things to remember for AFSA organizations are the informational and then the formal rush, and then the intake process happens after that.
Cool. Before I jump to Kavita, I also want to highlight, based on what Evan said, that is also the similar process around recruitment and membership intake for our Latinx serving organizations. But I'll have Kavita walk us through how our Asian interests and other multicultural groups do their recruitment process.
Yeah, so we usually start off in the first week of the spring. And yeah, we also do ours a little bit differently than some of the other councils on campus. So we basically have that first week of spring, and every day of the week we had like a different event that lasts around an hour, and the latter 15 to 30 minutes can just serve as like Q&A and just like mixing with people. And on each of those event days, we basically have someone come in to talk about either like actives or alumni or philanthropy, anything like that, and get your questions answered. And we also have a general information meeting for people to just like generally learn about the org at the beginning. And I think that you only need to go to 2 or 3 of these events to qualify for an interview, where we will do some more of the questions to ask for actual recruitment bids. Pretty chill.
Yeah, and I just wanted to jump back in and talk about with specifically AFSA organizations, the financial piece and kind of how that works. Kind of like Panos was saying, I just wanted to, you know, really emphasize that there are a lot of resources available. One thing that our chapter specifically has focused on is just lowering barriers to entry as it relates to financial accessibility. So just very candidly, membership is not cheap, especially the first year. There is kind of an upfront price that you have to pay, but I do want people to know one thing that I didn't know that I think would be really helpful to know is that after that, like that price is not what you have to pay every year at your Stanford experience or for like the rest of your life. It's just really to cover a lot of the costs associated with the like workshops and things we do during the intake process. So after that, you know, our chapter dues are $150 a year after that. And so if that's, you know, a problem for any members or for any people who might be interested in joining, we really encourage people to reach out to us, to me as president, or to, you know, Leah Clements, who's our financial officer, and we will work with you to find a solution. You know, we are trying to figure out if there's ways that the chapter can subsidize dues. There's also the opportunity fund that students can apply for. We're trying to work with our alumni to set up, you know, some kind of endowment or something like that, because what we don't want is anyone to be, you know, to shy away from pursuing membership in our organization for any financial reasons.
Great, thank you, Evan. I'm going to ask Araceli and then Emily to kind of tag team ISC recruitment, because they can look different than everything you've just heard. So I'll jump to Araceli first.
Yeah, of course. So ISC recruitment does look a little bit different. Basically, we have a formal recruitment that we host either the first or the second weekend of spring quarter. And basically, all of the ISC chapters come together, and prospective members will go from chapter to chapter, learning about each chapter, speaking with chapter members. And from there, the second day of formal recruitment is when it starts to narrow down a little bit. So I don't know if Carter wants me to talk about how chapters choose each other and how prospective members choose chapters. It gets a little bit complicated there, but essentially formal recruitment allows you to get to know a chapter better, and then from there you get to make your decision.
Great. I would just highlight, and Amanda can jump in as well, but our ISC process, or the Panhellenic organizations, just practiced a mutual selection process as the chapter as well as the potential prospective members are narrowing down their choices in regards to who they're interested in joining. That's the nuts and bolts. And as Araceli said, there's a lot more to it. And once you get here to Stanford, we would love to walk you through it. But Emily, is it possible for you to kind of walk us through what some of the expectations or what P&M can expect kind of going through that process?
Definitely. I think first I'd want to address like some misconceptions about, I think, going through recruitment. Like, you know, you watch all these movies and you see on TV and it can seem like, or even just like on YouTube of other schools and what their recruitment process looks like. That's like not really what happens at Stanford. I think the Inner Sorority Council is really dedicated to make sure it's a process that removes a lot of barriers and a lot of opportunities where people might not feel welcome or anything just that, like, because it generally can be a scary process if you're like meeting new people. But overall, I think something that's important to highlight is that the chapters are also like kind of equally nervous because they're excited to meet everyone going through and they've been waiting to meet anyone who's interested. So it's very much like that all those kind of scary stereotypes about it, I don't think exist as much at Stanford. I think that overall the process works is like, it's very much your decision if you want to go through recruitment. There's no, like, not everyone who is a freshman is pressured to go into it. It's kind of your own choice. And then once you're in it, you kind of can feel it out, see what it's like for you, and really want to emphasize that two-way street type of thing. Like, if you don't like a chapter, that's totally fine. And that more so it's in the hands of the people going through recruitment, which is really awesome, versus in the hands of like the chapter. And everyone who goes through it, like, and generally every chapter is really dedicated to making it as welcoming of a process as possible. I would also say that through like recruitment in general, it's what if you have like friends outside of the organization, there isn't like a lot of pressure to be in the same organization as your friends. Like, it's kind of very much your own process, and your friends might be in Greek life, they might not be in Greek life, but either way it's okay, and there isn't any pressure to be in an organization just because this person is or this person isn't. It's very much your own individual process, which is really awesome, going through it and then also being on the other side.
Awesome, thank you. I'll have Panos walk us through the IFC process, and then we'll jump to time commitment, and then I know we've got a bunch of other things that were asked.
Sure, much like IFC is dedicated to making the IFC rush process as comfortable and as accessible as possible. So basically at the beginning of spring, IFC does an introductory session where we introduce the leaders of all the fraternities, and then we do, well, not this year, a welcome barbecue where all the frats have an opportunity to meet prospective new members. And then there's a whole week of events that fraternities put on that are open to anyone who wants to check them out. And this is mainly an opportunity to meet the brothers who are in the chapter and check out multiple chapters. So a lot of people go around to the different chapters, to their different open events, just to meet people and see who they're vibing with and see what fraternity is the best match for them. So that's usually what people do, and it's nice to have that week of open events so you have an opportunity to explore. And it was just a lot of fun. A lot of the events are interesting. Deke is very known for bringing llamas to campus, so we always do sort of a petting zoo, and then we did like in and out, and then we also brought reptiles. Kind of weird, but you know, we go with the flow. So people are creative about making prospective new members as comfortable as possible. And then after these open events, you also have retreats that the fraternities organize, and then they invite all of the members that they want to get to know a little better. And I think there was also a question about how selective the process is. I think if you rush, you know, a few different fraternities, like you don't have your eye zeroed in on just one necessarily, you'll like definitely get a spot in Greek life on campus. I wouldn't say that it's the case as at some other schools where it's like a cutthroat competition for these spots. I think people maybe they didn't get their top ranked organization that they thought going into Stanford, but then 3 years later, it doesn't matter because they became the president of their chapter and they love all the people in it and they couldn't imagine themselves elsewhere. So that's mainly what the goal is of that rush process.
Great. Thanks, Panos. I think Amanda there's a lot of questions around how is recruitment being impacted by COVID, so I'll have Amanda give us a quick update.
Yeah, hi, Amanda, she, her, hers pronouns. Seeing a lot of things in the chat about what is the plan for freshmen going through recruitment this year, or sophomores, or housing, or anything like that. And we are very much all in this together. We are living in very uncertain times right now. And so what I can say is we don't know. We don't know what the future holds. We're on a timeline that is out of our control. However, what we do commit to is that we work with a lot of the leaders that you're seeing here on a weekly basis. They are very familiar with Carter and I in our office. And so the method that we use all the time is to engage our student leaders and what that looks like, to create processes, to be adaptable, to be nimble. I mean, even just this session is a true testament to how adaptable and nimble we've had to become, and we will continue to be. And so I don't have a really great answer except for to give you the answer of we don't know, but we're in it together. And a hallmark of our community here at Greek Life is that we have really awesome, amazing, capable students who are true partners with us in coming up with solutions. So we are, we're just going to wait and see. And when we're ready, we're going to assemble our team of student leaders to work with us through some of those challenging problems, because we don't know what the future holds. But as you can see from this, we're really open to being creative.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. One of the questions that kind of came through, and it also was showcased on a lot of your slides, you all do a lot of things in a lot of places and are super involved. Could I ask Kavita if you could just walk us through how you manage and balance all the different commitments that you have?
Yeah, so I would say that on average, I spend a similar amount of time on school and outside organizations, whether that's like research or volunteering or my cultural orgs. And I think it depends on the quarter, what exactly that looks like. So to be clear, I'm like pretty involved in like Asian American community clubs. And also like I'm doing most of the brunt of my CS major requirements in the last 2 years of my 4-year experience. So I have had an increased time commitment in the past year or so. But for me, I guess on a daily basis, what I do, something that's helpful for me is just like writing down everything I have to do the day before or week before and the hours I need to do those things. That's just personally what works for me. But in general, it helps to find a rhythm for each quarter at Stanford. And it's not like amazing to have to reset that every 10 weeks, but you will get used to it, finding your own rhythm. It's also finding other people to help keep you accountable, and you can find those people from inside of Greek orgs or in all kinds of other orgs on campus. And I think bringing this back to relating it with Greek life, not all of your interactions with the Greek community have to be in like super like stereotypically social settings. For example, like some of my best memories, like ironically, are staying up until like 4 or 5 a.m. working on a piece set. That's much less painful to do when I'm with some of my sisters. And even now in quarantine, keeping ourselves accountable with one another, just doing study calls together over Zoom is something that's helpful too.
Evan, do you have anything to add? I know you're pretty involved as well.
Yeah, I just, I wanted to be pretty transparent about the time commitment. I do think that, it is a significant time commitment. So if you're considering, joining Greek life, that's definitely something to think about pretty seriously. I think one advantage of Greek life at Stanford is that we do have the deferred recruitment process. So you do have some time to get used to, like Avita was talking about, the rhythms of the quarter system and Stanford before, joining your Greek organization. But it definitely is a time commitment, and specifically for AFSA organizations, it's more of a time commitment per person because we're doing the same amount of work as other chapters with 10 or less people in a chapter. So it's just like, I'm the president, but just another member of the chapter has probably just about as much work as I do. So that's also something to think about when you're considering your options and considering different organizations that you might want to join, just transparently.
Cool. I'll go to you, Panos, because I know you staff as well as work in your Greek organization.
Yeah, and I think this is pretty common for people to be, especially for unhoused organizations, since we don't have a house, you have members who are residential assistants in other communities, and they really care about that, and you can see the care that they put into their residential communities translate into the care that they put into their Greek communities. I think what's amazing about Stanford is that, yes, people are very invested in Greek life, but even as you see here, the presidents and the vice presidents and the leadership of these Greek organizations are so involved across campus that they can bring those experiences to their Greek chapters. They can mentor members of the organizations that have the same interests. And they don't have sort of blinders on. They know the entire campus community, and they can bring that diversity of experience to how they manage and they lead their chapter. So I think even though it can sometimes feel like a lot to balance your different communities, it ultimately makes both your Greek organization stronger and the other communities that you're a part of stronger. And I think that's pretty unique about Stanford.
Great. I'll have Emily as a member of a housed organization. How does that look differently for you?
I would say in some respects it's different that we have a physical place that we know where we're going to have chapter and that we eat together, but definitely not everyone lives in the house. I'm president and I didn't even live in the house this year. I think that generally most houses that are not dorms on campus have about an occupancy of about 60 people. And depending on the size of the Greek organization, not everyone can live in. So for us and a lot of other ISC sororities, that just not everyone lives in the house. But if you don't live in, it's totally fine. There isn't a pressure to do so. It's obviously welcomed and everyone would love if you did. But I think definitely if you don't think that's the right choice for you, but you still want to be a part of a house organization, by all means, feel free to do that. And that generally also, we have a number of members who are also staff elsewhere. So typically junior year, not everyone lives in the house, but generally in a normal year, sophomores live in the house and seniors live in the house, and then everyone kind of can come back and it's their home base. But the house is also very inclusive. So you can always have friends over for meals. You can study in the house with people not in the organization. People of another identifying gender are welcome in the houses. So it's definitely not oh, wow, I only can be in that house if I'm a member. It's definitely pretty welcoming and not all consuming.
All right, thank you. We've received a lot of questions around how diverse is the Greek community? How do they support students from marginalized or minoritized backgrounds? So I'll kind of kick it to Panos first, if you want to talk about how that shows up in the Greek community, and then we'll bounce around to the different panelists.
Sure. I think especially when it comes to IFC fraternities, which admittedly historically have been for white, privileged, straight, cis-identifying men. That's just how their history started. I think it takes a conscious effort to acknowledge that history, but also acknowledge that we fit into Stanford's broader mission of encouraging diversity in all its forms. And I'd say someone asked about how LGBTQ plus experiences are manifested in Greek life and how marginalized racial or ethnic identities manifest in Greek life. Part of this is that Greek organizations often partner with community centers on campus that have incredible experience supporting these communities. So for example, last spring, some IFC fraternities partnered with the Queer Resource Center to host a panel about the queer experience in Greek life, and just to open up that space for conversation. And I know members of cultural organizations can speak better to this than I can, the close partnership that exists between Greek organizations and those community centers, because so many students are cross-involved in leadership in both.
Would anyone like to touch on the relationship between community centers and Greek organizations? I can throw that to you, Evan, if you'd like to touch on it.
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. Just because, Alpha Kappa Alpha is the first Black Greek sorority. So just by nature of our founding, we do have very close ties to both the Black community and the women identifying community. So we tend to host a lot of our events at the Black Community Services Center on Stanford's campus or the Women's Community Center, to reach out to those communities. Also because, we are also an unhoused organization. So we tend to find community and build community in these pre-existing spaces on campus. And it also allows us to, we also want to build community within ourselves, but we don't want to remain insular. We want to reach out and, invite other members of these communities to our events, to do service with us, that kind of thing. And partnering with community centers on campus is a really excellent way to do that. And just speaking, I want to touch a little bit on the LGBTQ plus piece that Panos was touching on a little bit. We're a sorority, but we're thinking about how we can constantly be more gender inclusive. That's something that's definitely a focus for our chapter specifically. So like one thing I can touch on is we recently introduced a motion to change the pronouns in our chapter bylaws to they, them instead of she, her. So that's just one way that we're thinking about being conscious about how we're being inclusive of people who identify in various different ways. So that's just a little bit of an example about how our communities are thinking about that.
I'd also touch on that before I throw it to Araceli, that Stanford students and the Stanford Greek community has a history of challenging some of the hegemonic norms associated with Greek organizations, especially at the national level. Many of the students, as you've heard, are talking about what they've been able to do on the local level. There's also a lot of activism between from some of the Greek chapters in how they've kind of supported their national organizations too, as Evan said. How do we get our national organizations to start to shift pronouns, to change some of the language in their rituals and things like that? So a lot of that work is happening here at Stanford. They're inviting those national stakeholders to campus, to their houses. I know Theta's done that in the past, to actually ask them those difficult questions. So I think that is something that is something that the students are always mindful of, and challenging us, myself and Amanda, as administrators, as well as challenging each other across councils to kind of be better and to, again, continue to aim to be a more inclusive community. I don't know if Araceli, if you had anything else you'd want to add to how it shows up on campus.
I was just going to add that, in spirit of transparency, ISC and IFC have historically been predominantly white. And even now, you definitely still get that sense. So I would just say that, we're definitely still striving to be as diverse, inclusive, and equitable as possible, just within our own organization. And a couple of other organizations, we've started this diversity and inclusion position to really encourage that within our own chapters. And so how we've used that position is by hosting workshops, by hosting implicit bias trainings before recruitment. So we're always trying to improve.
Awesome, thank you. I think we have time for one more question, and we've received a lot. But what I want to throw to the group, and I'll have Emily kind of kick us off with this one. I would just be curious for you all to kind of just share, how has your Greek experience been helpful during what we're dealing with right now during COVID? Because we've seen some questions around how that has shown up for your chapters.
It definitely has been in a time of uncertainty and a lot of things not being pretty consistent. It's been a really consistent community. And what's really exciting is seeing a lot of members who are not maybe on exec or not involved, but saying hey, I plan to Zoom for Sunday. We're all doing a trivia. We just had actually this past week, the Academy Awards, and people won awards and stuff like that. And then we just started a pen pal thing where people can put their addresses and mail each other physical letters. And every day in our group chat, people are sending articles and videos and just really exciting things. We have an opportunity for people to show what classes they're virtually taking, and then other people can say, I'm in that class too. And even though we're not physically together, we're really trying hard to be present in one another's lives, and also understanding that a lot of our members might not have really great home situations or wherever they are right now, and not putting there is no pressure to be on nothing's required of members at the moment, because we need to understand and respect that of one another. And even us as an executive team have been just sending text to people saying hey, don't worry about responding, just want to let you know I'm here for you. And that's kind of, I think, what we're doing to ease the pressure off of people, but give them a sense of community wherever they are in the world.
Awesome. Kavita, would you like to kind of share how your chapter has been navigating what we're dealing with right now?
Yeah, sure. So Sigma Psi Zeta being an Asian rooted sorority, we definitely have had, we're definitely taking note of some of the anti-Asian American and anti-Asian sentiment that's been going around because of COVID-19, which is obviously something very serious and something that our own members have even been having to deal with at like the airport and just outside and stuff like that, which is like totally unacceptable. So just, I don't know, having space during our chapter meetings or just Zoom calls or, just text message chat to, talk about our experiences, and also having like dedicated time at meetings to go through how we can better show solidarity with one another and also with other marginalized communities for whom experiences like this might be just part of their daily life. And something else that we've done as a chapter recently was SYZ is very closely affiliated with the San Jose Women's Home, our Asian Women's Home, and they have remained open even throughout the coronavirus outbreak, even in San Jose, which is one of the most heavily impacted communities. And so we recently just finished up a fundraiser to raise around 3 weeks worth of money for them to handle their facilities for that period of time. So we're just trying to support each other and support the community with empathy. And I think that's what we're doing.
Phenomenal. Thank you, Kavita. I wanted to say thank you to our panelists. We're right about that time, and I know as an OSC, we have a whole other panel to get ready for, to set up. Again, thank you all for your time. Thank you for joining us. We hope you learned a lot from the students. We want to encourage you to check out our website. It's being revamped at the moment, but fsl.stanford.edu is where you can find a little bit of information about our community, and stay tuned for additional information coming soon. You can also view this recording and check out all the other sessions that have been hosted for the virtual activities fair at admit.stanford.edu. Again, thank you for joining us. Congratulations again to you as well as your parents and family, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you all.
Thank you.